think I clicked something I shouldn't have clicked.
That's okay. So you just started the broadcast. So anyone that has already logged in can hear us. But that's okay. And if all the attendees that are on, you guys are muted right now. But if you will just give us about 8 minutes, and that's when the webinar will start. We're just going to do a couple quick things to make sure that the audio and the presentations are both working. So just bear with us for a few more minutes. Okay, so I can see your presentation.
Can you see it now?
Yep, I sure can. I would put it in the presentation mode where you can only view one slide at a time, though.
Oh, that's what I was asking. That's what I see on my computer. It's just one.
Yeah. So I can see your next slide as well.
Okay. Cool. Oh, okay. Still does it. You still see two? Okay. Megan, how many do you see now? Megan?
Tracy, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you.
I know. Actually, my phone was disconnected, so I just had to dial back in. Sorry about that.
Can you just see one screen now?
No, I can see both still.
I don't know how to do it then. I put slideshow and we only see
Okay,
one.
so go to your display settings. Do you see that up at the top?
Yes.
Yeah, go down right there.
Uh-huh.
And then I think it's swap presenter view and slideshow, perhaps, or try the other one. Yeah, there you go.
That did it?
Yep, that did
Okay.
it.
Great.
And if you guys have time at the end, I'm sure that there might be some questions. So would you be okay with taking some questions?
Oh yeah. We sure will.
Okay. And the way that we do it is in the chat box, so they can type it in, and we can read it out loud, and then you can address it then.
All right. Yeah.
But ladies, I'm going to put my phone on mute while we wait another 4 minutes or so.
Good morning, and welcome to AASB's Pre-K Grant webinar. I'm Susan Salter, Director of Leadership Development for the Association, and I'll be the host of this session for you. Before we begin, I've got just a couple of housekeeping announcement items. First of all, you may want to disable your screensaver so that your computer doesn't time out during this webinar. I believe at the moment we have all of the lines muted, but we will have an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation. In the meantime, if something comes up that you want to ask a question about during the presentation, you have a chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can type your questions in there. I will remind you of that when we get to the end and are able to ask questions or open it up for questions. We are recording this webinar, and it will be available in our archives in a few days or possibly by this afternoon. If you have any trouble during this call or while viewing the presentation, you need to call the customer service line at 855-352-9002. That's 855-352-9002. You'll need to have the webinar ID number handy. That was in the email that was sent to you with the link for logging on and viewing and calling in today. So to get down to the business that brings us here, we are absolutely delighted to have with us two representatives of the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education, Dr. Tracy Stritchett. I knew I was going to screw that up, Tracy. I'm so sorry. Dr. Tracy Stritchett and Tammy Gibson. They're going to share with you how your school system can apply for a grant through Alabama's First Class Pre-K program. And so with that, ladies, you are unmuted and you can take it away.
Good morning, and thank you for spending your lunch with us. We get the privilege of talking about something that we're very passionate about. We are in the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education. Our programs within the department start pre-birth. So we have Nurse-Family Partnership Program. We have Parents as Teachers. We also have a grant with Department of Human Resources to coach those teachers that are in child care. We go into pre-K, and then we have a transition plan that goes kindergarten to second grade, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. We know that gaps begin even before students begin public school. So those children that grow up in poverty are at sometimes 2 years behind their peers when they walk into kindergarten. So 90% of a child's brain is developed before the age of 5. And so some of the problems that are occurring in our classes cannot be fixed by K-12. Hold on, I'm trying to.
Are you having issues getting the slide to advance?
I can't advance the slide, yeah.
Okay, so click back on your screen.
There we go. There we go. So gaps between, and I want to talk to you, Tammy Gibson, and we want to tell you about how you can write for a grant, but before we tell you that, we want to tell you why you should write for a grant. Gaps between advantaged and disadvantaged children begin emerging as early as 9 months of age. By 18 months, toddlers from low-income families can already be several months behind in language development, and the gaps continue to widen, leaving disadvantaged children up to 2 years behind age 5. The best way to close this achievement gap is with high-quality early childhood programs like quality child care, home visitation, and quality pre-K. So here's really the bottom line, is that the achievement gap neither originates nor can be closed by K-12 schools. And that's why we really think that it's very important that school systems invest in early childhood, meaning Alabama's First Class Pre-K, that last window of opportunity, that 4-year-old year, to really boost their achievement before they begin kindergarten. So if you look at this slide, you will see that 92% of the brain is developed by the age of 5. We know from several studies, and science provides us with 2 key concepts that explain why those first 1,000 days of life matter so much for children's development. The human brain starts off with 100 billion brain cells, and those brain cells function because of trillions of connections. A baby is born with just about 1 billion brain cells, but they're very, very poorly connected. When we're born, we don't have very many synapses connecting the brain cells. Those connections are created through interactions with a caring adult. And if you don't know about First Class Pre-K, Alabama's First Class Pre-K has received the highest quality ranking from the National Institute of Early Education Research for, I think, is it 13 years, Tammy? For 13 years in a row. And we're very proud of that. We are only one of 2 states that have received that ranking. What began the pre-K push many years ago came from 2 studies, one being the Abecedarian Project, and so if you have some time, you could Google that, and another being the Perry Preschool Project. And they were able to find that those that attend a high-quality early childhood program later in life, if they follow them longitudinally, they're less likely to drop out of school, they're more likely to have a job, they're less likely to be on drugs, and they're less likely to go to prison. So if you pay up front, you won't have to pay later. And so James Heckman, his work, he was an economist, you're able to see that early childhood development directly influences the economy, health, social outcomes for individuals and society. So with human development, it's never too late, but setting things right in the first place is much easier than fixing them down the line. Just like concrete, and this is a picture of concrete, whenever the concrete is wet, you can make an impression quite easily, just like in those early years, 0 to 3. When they're 4 and it begins to dry, you can still make an impression. It's just a little more difficult. And this is, well, I thought that this is what we see in K-12. The problems are more difficult to change, and those gaps are harder to close. So let me tell you a little bit about Alabama's First Class Pre-K. The Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education provides grants to local school systems, child care, Head Start, nonprofits, and other agencies to support First Class Pre-K classrooms across the state. That grant process is out right now. Over the last 13 years, early childhood professionals from across the state have worked very hard on building a framework. And we always say that our guidelines are not laminated because they do change all the time based on the feedback of those teachers and those directors that are within our programs. This is our framework, and these are what we know work based on research. Our teachers are involved in 20 hours of professional development. 30 hours. Our assistant teachers are 20. So each pre-K classroom has 2 teachers within that classroom. One that has a degree in early childhood or child development, and an assistant teacher that has a child development associate certificate or equivalent. We also have developmental standards for preschool children. They're not your typical math and science. They're social emotional, math, science. It's all domains of the child. If you receive a First Class Pre-K grant, you will also receive an Alabama First Class Pre-K coach. That coach comes into your classroom and works with your teacher on setting goals, setting professional development goals. It's just kind of like having a partner in that classroom. We also, if you receive a First Class Pre-K grant, you will send out an announcement, and those students will apply online, and you'll randomly select from all that applied for your program. Each one of those that are selected for your program will be involved in a screening process. That's it's called the ASQ, which is Screener for Developmental Delays. And that goes into the Help Me Grow database, and then children that have developmental delays can be referred for special education or to pediatricians or to receive more, if they need to receive glasses or if they need dental help. It's those sorts of screeners, because if the child can't see, obviously they're going to struggle in school. You also receive a program monitor. That is the person that helps directors with their budget, because sometimes it can be very difficult because we have programs that are blending funds with Title School funds, Title I funds, state pre-K funds, all sorts of, we have many different scenarios of people blending funds, local funds. We are a diverse delivery. We have 802 classrooms within public schools. so that is our most popular. But we also hear that public schools are running out of space at times. So we have public schools that in some counties that are partnering with churches or private child cares to offer pre-K. We also have public school. We also have first-class pre-K and Head Start, private child care, faith-based, college and university, military. As many different places as you can think is where we have pre-K. I think I spoke of this earlier. For the past 13 years, Alabama has met all of the National Institute of Early Learning Research benchmarks for quality standards, making Alabama one of only 2 states to meet this level of quality. This is data from our pre-K children last year. If you look all the way to the left, this is the fall of 2017. And those children that entered first-class pre-K, 75.1% of those children performed at below widely held expectations. So we know the national norm and how a 4-year-old should be performing. Those 75% are performing below widely held expectations. If that child did not have pre-K and went to kindergarten, that child would be way behind. At the end of pre-K, if you go to the next set of bar graphs, at the end of pre-K, 24.9 children are meeting or exceeding. Or still below widely held expectations. Go all the way to the right, Go all the way to the right, meeting or exceeding. If you look at the green, I'll use that one as an example this time, social emotional. At the end of the school year, 93.4% of children are meeting or exceeding widely held expectations. And of course, those widely held expectations are not the same as the fall widely held expectations because they're 9 months older. So in 9 months, those children have made over 1 year's worth of progress. Everything we do within our department has a huge research and evaluation component. We actually have monthly meetings with a team from different universities, from public health, colleges of education, PARCA, and we meet monthly because there's times that we might find out something that we need to change. We see outcomes that need to be changed within our guidelines or within our practices. But we do know through following our children all the way through 3rd grade, we actually have some data up to 7th grade, that those children that attend Alabama's first-class pre-K are more likely to be proficient in reading, more likely to be proficient in math, less likely to be retained in grade, less likely to be chronically absent. And you can put a number figure to that because obviously it costs money to go back to school another year. And so if you want to see more details, all of this is on our website. This is reading and math at 3rd and 6th grade. We can see that they're more likely to be proficient in reading and math. This is your attendance for low income. Special education, those that attend pre-K are less likely to be referred for special education. We really like for them to be referred in pre-K because if they are, they're more likely to get out of the IEP earlier. Now I want to talk to you about the grant process, and I'm going to pull Tammy in to help with this. Our grant process is out right now, and here is sort of how it works. Education trust funds are allocated to our department. We put out an RFP, which is out right now, and it's on our website. Interested organizations, meaning a public school, a private child care, university, they would apply. After the application process, all applicants are read and scored by outside readers, so we don't even look at it in our office, and then grants are awarded. We hold some funds out for intervention and another grant type that I'm going to talk to you about that's a new one. If you look at the map on the right, and we can share this PowerPoint afterwards, you can see if you can find your county and how many classrooms are within that county and how many are being served. So statewide, we're at 32% of 4-year-olds in the state are being served. And here's our growth chart. Currently, right now, we have 5,462 students on a wait list that do not have a seat and a place in a first-class pre-K. We've already started registration for children. And we know as of January the 28th, we had 9,904 children that were signed up for pre-K for next year. I think we have a more updated number, and it's around 12,000 now, I believe. 12 to 13,000 today. Children have signed up for pre-K for next year.
This is Tammy Gibson. Hi, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. We appreciate your interest and want to make sure that we're able to answer all of your questions. And then we've got the existing grant types that we've always had, which is the Excellent, the tiered, which is based on your free and reduced lunch rate, and then the Plus Intervention New Classroom, which are all for brand new classrooms that are not full of 4-year-olds presently. And then a new one that we have is our equity grant. And that equity grant is because we're, as a department, committed to ensuring that every child in Alabama has access to this high-quality early learning, no matter what the local funding capacity is of the school. So as a result of that, we're working to develop a grant program which will provide a level playing field to all those who choose to offer pre-K. And that's by doing this equity grant that we're working on developing. And it'll be for entities that meet very specific criteria related to local funding capacity. So the grant program is still being developed, but will be designed to reduce the local burden for school systems that want to offer pre-K but may not have the local funds to supplement our grant, because our grants do require 25% match at this time. So that equity grant will help address those issues that some of our school systems have. The Excellent grant is available to any program, and it's typically up to $45,000 per classroom. And that's an existing classroom that someone may have, an entity may have, that already has 4-year-olds in it, but they need help to make it first-class quality. So we'll grant up to $45,000 in that case. The next one is that tiered, and it is reduced based on your free and reduced lunch rate. So whatever the school system's free and reduced lunch rate, you can go from $80,200 if you have a low free and reduced lunch rate all the way up to $92,700. And then the next one is that Plus Intervention. Oh yeah, and the tiered grants are renewed annually. We're just an extension form. That's a new process for us this year too. We used to do a 3-year cycle, but now we're going to do that every year because our guidelines are pretty strict. So we're heavily involved in the classroom, so we know anybody that needs help. And then the next one is that new classroom grant that's open right now. We opened the new classroom grants back in December, and they will be open until March 15th at 5 p.m. That's a Friday. So 5 p.m. those grant applications will no longer be able to be submitted starting 5:01. So if you're interested, then you've got until March 15th to do that. Those Plus Intervention New Classroom grants, typically they're the same types and amounts. We just award them kind of at different times. So the new classroom is primarily the largest percentage of those, and they're up to $120,000, and that enables you to start up that classroom and then buy some a setup with the furniture and all the things that we require in our pre-K classrooms. That's a 1-year grant, and then you'll move into normally the tiered, and some of them go to Excellent. So that's that process, and it's grantees must apply. Yeah, you either apply for a tiered or an Excellent for next year. And then application prioritizing, we look at, there's a lot of different factors that we look at. We do the outside evaluation first, and then the outside evaluators will find a median scoring, and then everything below that is denied, unfortunately, and then everything above it is when we start to look at these other points. We look at the poverty base and, the free and reduced lunch rate for the area that the classroom will be in. We look at the high need counties, going back to the map that Tracy shared with what percentages are currently being served in your counties, and then we apply that to those the ones that the first outside evaluator has used per rubric to determine scoring. And then this is the actual, like, our website that you'll see. And this is where you will go and click on it. Just wanted to run through because you know why now it can be advantageous, certainly for your youth population, in applying for a grant. And this is just the down and dirty of how to get to it. Our website is children.alabama.gov, and that's what you'll see when you log onto that in your URL. So applying for that first class pre-K grant, the very first page you see, I always tell people to go to the little boy in the green shirt. That's where our first class pre-K grants are. So you click on him, and then you will see this next page. The green bar is Found It, and Found It, you'll hear that a lot. That's our application site. That's the grant management software program that we use. So that link is there, and there's also, if you are one of those people that, has a large waiting list and someone speaks to you about maybe applying for a second classroom, or you were kind of late and you were invited to apply for something, then that green bar sometimes goes away because we don't want people to get confused once the grant cycle is closed. But the one at the very bottom of the page, that second one in turquoise, it's always there, so that if you apply for something outside of the new classroom grant, that will be there. So if you click on that, then I did want to point out, and I should have said this before, when Tracy was talking about our guidelines and our standards, those are always on our website because they do change when we find out things or if we think something needs to be tweaked. So I always tell people, before you even start to write your grant, to look at our guidelines, because our guidelines will tell you exactly what we expect you to do, and the rules, if you want to call them rules, that we want you to follow. But it tells you the language that we're looking for and the results that we want to see, so it will help you write your grant. Because if you're talking about something that's not in our guidelines, then that could hurt your scoring potentially. So you want to see the language, and you want to see kind of our philosophy and what we want to see in a classroom, and that will help you in your grant writing process. So that's that. But when you click on that, that's where, like, once you click on the guidelines, that's where you'll see them. You have the classroom guidelines, the program guidelines, and then the appendices. The appendices will tell you your teacher salary that we require. It'll tell you what we expect you to have in the classroom. So all of that covenant is very thorough. So that's something that, you'll want to even print out and keep. Okay. Oh, yeah. And then in the appendix too, Tracy just reminded me that a lot of our people think that because it's a government program, kind of state program funded, that you're not allowed to charge fees. You are allowed to charge fees, and especially we used to have, we had a federal grant, so a lot of our new classrooms we were granting through federal funds so that we could grow our program, and there was a limitation on those funds of who could charge fees and not, but that federal grant, it has ended, so all of our new classroom funding is coming from state funds, and they don't have that same restriction. Now, we do limit, and that's in the guidelines for how much you can charge for those fees, but you can charge fees to help fund that classroom. So all of that's in your appendices. Okay, and then go back to that. So you'll click on that green Found It bar, or that one down at the bottom that says click here to begin the online application, and then you'll see a login page, and this takes you directly into Found It. If your organization, so like if your county board of education has a pre-K site at a different school, even if it's in a different city or whatever, typically it is the organization, so the board of education central office, that's going to manage it. So you'll be using their tax ID number, and once you put in a duplicate tax ID number, you'll get a screen that says this organization already exists. Please contact Tammy Dixon. So you send me an email saying, hey, I tried to create a new account. It says my account already exists. And I add you as a user, and I will send you a password, and then you just log in. So your email address will always be kind of your username. So email address, and then the first time you log in, when I send you that password, it's going to tell you to change your password. So that way your password is secure and only you know it. If you just happen to be one of those entities that does not have any pre-K anywhere in your system, then you will create a new account. And when you do that, you'll have to do, you'll need your FEIN number, so your tax ID number. It will also ask you for a vendor code. The state of Alabama pays by vendor code, so the comptroller's office through STARS will make you do that. That link is embedded in the application, so you don't have to worry about that. If you don't know yours and you're having a hard time finding someone in your your organization that knows it, call me, because I probably have it on file if we have one. So I'll be glad to share that with you if it saves you, half a day of trying to track somebody down. But then the next page that you'll see when you log on, that's your applicant dashboard. So even if you don't have any applications out there, you'll still have an applicant dashboard, and that'll have all of your organization information on it. And if you ever see an error there, if you'll just shoot me an email, I can fix that or explain to you why it says what it says. So in applying for the new classroom grant, you'll always hit the apply button at the top, because your applicant dashboard shows you current. So if there's one that you're working on, then it will say edit application like this one does, and that way it's open. But once it turns to view, that means that you've already submitted it and you can't make changes. If you accidentally submit something, just call me, because I can revert it back so that you can edit it further if you need to. But then once you hit apply, then it opens and it tells you, like right now, that our grant application is open, and you'll see the little the blue apply on that shaded first box, and that's the new classroom grant, the one that says first class funding, and you just hit that apply button on the blue. Occasionally, further into it, once you have a pre-K, then we may invite you to apply for a salary enhancement or a playground enhancement, whatever, a classroom enhancement. Then we'll give you a access code, and that access code goes in the very top one where it says enter. It's kind of misleading a little bit where that quick search bar is right under where it talks about the access code, but it's in that very top one. The next page that you'll see, I always like to share this too, because if you're writing but you need input from someone else and you need someone else to help you with a certain section of it, there's a preview button, and if you push that preview button, then it opens the grant application in PDF form, so you can print it if you like to write, like I do. I like to write and scribble and cross out and highlight and all that kind of good stuff. So you're able to do that without actually going into the application. And then, because a lot of times when people go into it, they may start and then they go, oh my goodness, I need help with this, or they're asking me budget stuff and I don't do budget, I need my CSFO. So you can hit that preview button, print that out, or just look at it so that you know what information you need to pull together without actually opening it and starting. And then the application itself, you'll see that vendor, that very first question is about the vendor code. But like I said, that link is right there. They'll ask you for a vendor code and an address code. The vendor code is one number for every entity, so that that check goes directly to whatever entity needs to be paid. The second one, the address code, it's kind of like the turning point once it gets to central office. So if you have a USDA account and its address code AD0001, then if you use the same one for your pre-K site, then that money is going to go into the same account as the USDA check. So a lot of times people will establish different address codes to do that. Some larger, like our universities, have multiple address codes because they have different schools and different buildings that they want address codes to go to. But that address code is very useful for people that have different accounts set up within one entity. Yeah, so that will help a lot. This is your dashboard so that you kind of know where you are in the process. The next thing, once you guys submit an application and it's approved, then the next thing that we'll do is create what we call a memorandum of understanding, and that's your contract. So everything that we do now is electronic. So when when you get approved and we say congratulations, you've been awarded a new pre-K grant, we'll send that email out, and that email will include your MOU is now ready for signature and submission in Foundin. So I get a lot of calls that say, I don't know what Foundin is and I don't know what you're talking about. This is what I'm talking about. When that MOU is ready, it will be assigned to whoever applies. So if it needs to go to a different signee, then that's just something that you need to share with us so that we can add them as a user and Foundin, and I can assign the MOU to that person so that they then can log in, open the agreement, agree to all the terms of it, and then electronically add their signature and then submit it back to us. And then once we get that back, then we establish typically 3 payments. There has been some discussion this year, and it just hasn't been finalized yet, that there may be 4 payments this year just so that we can get our entities some money before school starts, but still have a regular thing so that you can budget your funds. But that will be there. And then once that's submitted, any time that you need to see it, you can always log back in and pull it up and look at it. And that way too, you can cover where your check is and even how. And I don't go too much into that just on the front end because I found it can be very confusing, and I don't want you to be afraid of it because it's not that complicated. There's just a lot of little pieces to it, but that also means that any information that you need, whether a check has been cut, when that check was cut, what that check number was, all of that is in Foundin and available for you to see at any time. So that's just the meat of how you can apply. And we're always in the office pretty much. And I always tell people we don't have desk phones. So we carry our phones with us all the time. So we should be really accessible. So if you need help, don't hesitate to reach out because we don't do any of this by ourselves. It's our schools and our privates and our YMCAs and our churches, and it's the work that they do in the field that helps us do what we're able to do. So don't hesitate to call on us. I'm going to turn it back over to Tracy, and then we'll take questions.
So if you have a strong pre-K and you finish out that year and you say, now what? And that is actually a question that was brought to our department. This is such great gains in pre-K. They're going to kindergarten and taking what some are doing as dibbles, and they're testing end of kindergarten, and we're not used to that. What do we do? And so under Governor Ivey's leadership, we were able to invest in a bridge to develop and expand a birth to 8 continuum. And this is to create a vertical alignment spanning pre-K to 3rd grade. And it's not just building on the success of the pre-K program, but it's building on the success of that individual child. So not replicating pre-K and kindergarten, but taking what that child knows in pre-K and expanding it into kindergarten. Currently, we are providing small grants to individual classrooms for classrooms to buy this learning laboratory in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And it looks a lot like a project-based learning. You find groups of children working together, lots of math and science activities, lots of talking. We've seen some really good results in our pilot, and currently we are looking at next school year starting off with 135 classrooms across the state. Whenever you apply for one of these grants, called the P3 Continuum Grant, you're ensuring that you're participating in 3 components: leadership, assessment, and instruction. And the leadership is that we like for our site-based leader within this classroom. Well, first off, you have to have a very successful pre-K. And the principal within that school has to participate in our early childhood leadership program, which is through class. And you can find out more information about that on the website. That application is open right now. We provide your funds to go to this 1-year-long process, and you're provided a coach. So it is free to those principals that participate. And you can participate even if you do not have a pre-K to 3rd grade continuum grant. Also, if you receive one of these P3 grants, you're agreeing to participate in our assessment. It is a formative, online, observation-based assessment where the teacher is observing the learning and making changes to her instruction in real time. And we provide, I think it's a 2-day training for that, and you're provided a coach to come in the classroom and to continue that coaching and that professional development throughout the year. You're also agreeing to family engagement and vertical and horizontal team meetings. We actually provide funding for you to have substitutes for those teachers so that they are involved in planning pre-K, kindergarten, first and second. And we call this our active participatory learning approach. That's like a tongue twister. It's project-based learning, and if you ever get a chance to go visit a school, I urge you to visit Coffee County. Zion Chapel is one of our model schools that's doing the P3 learning approach. I think they were highlighted in a national magazine. We also have, if you're interested, the letters. It is based in strong science. It's not a curriculum. It just is teaching teachers the critical components to what is needed to teach a child how to read. So it provides that educator the knowledge to know that child A needs this and child B needs that. And so we're offering that. I believe we have 132 educators in that right now, just as many on the wait list. All of this can be found on our website. Do we have any questions?
While folks have the opportunity to type their questions into that question box on the right, let me first thank you guys for doing this. Alabama's early childhood program is amazing and offers such great opportunities for our kids, and this program is particularly helpful with the grants. We do appreciate your work today. Let me ask, you kind of touched on this in a couple of places, but are there any mistakes that you see people making in their grant applications? Are there some things that you would just say, you know, we see this frequently, don't do this?
Well, I'll start, and then I'm going to pass it over to Tammy, because Tammy probably has a longer list than I do. I think one of the number one mistakes is not reading our guidelines first. So sometimes they'll put in there, they're going to do like an ABECA program. Well, that's just a literacy phonics-based program. We require a comprehensive-based curriculum. So not reading our guidelines to see really what the philosophy of our department is and what requirements they are, because if you don't get the grant, it might be because of that. Or if you get the grant and order the wrong curriculum, we'll have to make you send it back. So not knowing our guidelines is mine. Tammy?
Yeah, I would back that up, because typically the mistakes or the things that we see a lot are, and then we ask for pictures in the application. Make sure it's an attractive, inviting environment. I've seen pictures of things that look like basement dungeons. I mean, they're dark, there's no windows. We would not want to put children in that kind of environment. So think about things that are on kind of that level. We don't need to see a TV in the corner that looks like it's very prominent in the curriculum of that classroom. It's not age appropriate, and it's certainly not a great learning environment. So think about things like that and just really read those guidelines, because the guidelines will reinforce the philosophy of what we're looking for. And if you understand our guidelines like really well, and that will certainly help you in the long run.
And also teacher, knowing, not really understanding what we require for a teacher. And sometimes we'll have a principal, they'll say, I've got a third grade teacher that wants to go teach pre-K. And so, hey, we got a grant, we're going to move you down to pre-K. And then we come in and say, we need to see your transcript, and you show it to us, and she has an elementary degree. Well, you got to move her. She has to have an early childhood degree. And so if you're not sure, we have a place to upload those transcripts. We can approve them. I've approved 6 the night of a board meeting. You know, I've looked at 6 transcripts and said 2 of these are okay, the other 4 are not. So we're more than willing to help you.
Those are really good points. Anything else that you'd add along those lines? I don't want to cut your list off.
I think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I think that those are probably the high points.
Okay, cool. Those are helpful to know. At this point, nobody has submitted a question in the chat box. Somebody has asked that you reiterate the deadline.
Okay, the deadline for new classroom grants is March 15th, so that's a Friday, and they will close at 5 o'clock. It's got a hard deadline on it this year.
Okay. All right, that's the only question. I'll give folks one more second or two to see if anybody else has a question. I feel like I should have Jeopardy music playing while they think. I know. All right, well, first, let me say again, thank you to Tammy and Tracy for doing this for us and for our attendees. This was truly helpful information, and we appreciate it. For those of you who are participating, thank you for joining us. We have one more question. When will the grants be awarded?
They are typically awarded at the end of May. We are dependent on what the legislators decide on budget. So if they go into extra sessions, then it may be a little longer, but we almost always award by the end of May, and it'll be through the governor's office first, and then we'll post it on our website. Normally, as soon as the governor announces it, then I'll send out an email to everyone telling them that they're awarded and that to be looking for their MOU. But so normally you have from the end of May until September 1st, or whenever your normal school starting date is, to roll out that new classroom.
Perfect. Someone else has asked if the PowerPoint will be available online. We will email it to the participants that are registered. And someone has asked if you could give the website to apply again.
Yeah. So our website is children.alabama.gov. And you don't have to put a www or anything, just children.alabama.gov. So Alabama is spelled out and then G-O-V.
Okay. Someone has asked if we already have a classroom partially filled with pre-K age children enrolled in our center, would those children have to go through the lottery system?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from participants? Where do we find the rubric?
We don't have a rubric yet. The outside reader uses a rubric, but it's not published. It's something that she uses on her own to make sure that her evaluation is standardized across everything that she reads. And so and it's an outside source, so we don't even see it.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Somebody has said thank you. Daryl Wood said thank you. We appreciate that, Daryl. And I know these ladies do. Thank you all for participating. Just a quick reminder that our next webinar will be student walkouts and teacher protests, and it will be April the 18th. We hope everybody will be able to join us. And Tammy and Tracy, thank you again for your help. Yeah, everybody have a great day.
So much. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.